Hello, welcome to This Week in Politics. Well, today we're going to take a look at several different stories that happened this week. This has been a big week. The first one I want to lead off with, for those of you that have been watching or listening to me for a while, I have been saying this many times about Facebook. What you're seeing played out on the newspaper pages and mainstream media and in Congress is all a big show. What I mean by that is this. The leaders of Facebook, Google, and Twitter, they want the federal government to regulate them. They realize, all three of them, that they are left wing. They understand that if they try to regulate their own companies by setting standards of policy content, language content, etc., they will be held personally accountable. However, if they can get the Congress to set some regulations on them, they will always be able to blame politicians. And that's what they want, specifically with Facebook. Zuckerberg has delusions of grandeur of running for president in 2020. Therefore, his invention, Facebook, in 3 years cannot come out against him in any way, shape, or form. So how does he get there in 3 years? Well, actually 2 years if he's going to launch a campaign. And that is, he's going to need the federal government to step in and regulate speech. Now, he has attempted to do that, and at every step of the way, he is paid. Most recently, there is a conservative show of two black women on it called Diamond and Silk. They have over 1 million followers. They are avid Trump followers, and they were taken down by Facebook. They came out and raised Cain about it. While Zuckerberg was on Capitol Hill, it was mentioned. He said it was being fixed. The last I heard, they were extremely restrained. All of their people were not seeing all of their material, but they were back on. Up to this point, Zuckerberg has done things like, rather than take the heat for defining terms such as hate speech and speech that doesn't go according to their standards, he has farmed that out, and I use air quoting marks with that. The three companies he has farmed that out to are all ultra left-wing companies. There's no conservatives represented. If there had been conservatives represented, Diamond and Silk would not have been touched. It really surprised me they went after Diamond and Silk. I mean, supposing they are avid left-wingers, as they claim to be, I mean, how much more left-looking can you get than two black females? I mean, that amazes me. But yet, because they're espousing conservative goals, they have no problem at all going against one of their core constituency. I mean, I don't think that helped Zuckerberg very much going into his election than to have it on his resume that he has, and technically he didn't. The companies that are regulating them did, but still, his company shut down two black females. It's this environment that immediately after the 2016 election, Zuckerberg came out and claimed that the Russians influenced the election by opening fake accounts on Facebook. Again, a great big nothing. I mean, yeah, there was a couple of accounts. They probably spent a couple $1,000. and they were pro and anti-Trump. This all came out after all of the hype and the hysteria. At that time, it warranted another trip to Capitol Hill, another threat from Feinstein and the rest of the liberals that they were going to regulate Facebook. This time, the story is something Analytica. What was the name of that? I don't know. Something Analytica. But anyway, the hype was that they had stolen your personal information off of Facebook to help get Trump elected. That was what was being said. That was the news story. That's how we got to where we are now. The fact of the matter is this. This Analytica company used a software that Facebook knew about, that Obama used back in 2012. In fact, Facebook helped Obama get the information with this piece of software. And they used that to tailor make commercials for their candidate. In 2012, they took the information that they got from the Facebook app, this app that they had created for Facebook. They farmed the information, they narrowed it down, and tailored their commercials to that information. When Obama did it, it was hailed as genius. 4 years later, and I do want to say that this was not done for Trump. It was not even done while Trump was there. It was done long before Trump entered the race. But they used a similar app and harvested information from Facebook and then used it for other advertising. Now, when I say harvested information, I want to be perfectly clear. They didn't take any social security numbers. They didn't take any private information. All they took and all they gleaned was information that you voluntarily put on there. Your friends, what you like, what you don't like, the food you eat, the cars you drive, the zip codes you live in. This is all information you put out there. You voluntarily put it out there. If you don't want it out there, then don't put it out there. I think every user of the internet knows that once something is on the internet, it's there. And if somebody goes out there and uses a big fishing net to gather it all up and sort it all out and do what they do with it, that's kind of your fault, not their fault. They're just using what you put out there. But the information is out there now that they stole your information, which is not true, off of Facebook, which is probably not only true, and they used it to narrow their ads towards you. Now, I heard somebody say the other day, I would kind of prefer that. I mean, if they're going to put ads on my screen, why do I want ads from stuff I'm not interested in? If I'm looking for a car, I'd like to see some car ads. So yeah, tailor it to me so I can look at the right kind of cars. And if I'm in a political season and I'm a Democrat, why do I want to hear about what Republicans have to say? Show me what the Democrats are saying and doing. Yeah. So take that information, narrow that information down for me, and then tailor your ads to me. I like that idea. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. But Facebook, however, has built this straw man. And the reason they've built this straw man, XYZ company stole your information. Well, the reason they're doing that is because they want to tear that straw man down with regulation on social media. Now, one of the things that kind of slipped out, I don't know if it's on purpose or not, from Zuckerberg, was that there's going to be a part of Facebook where you can go to pay for Facebook. And my guess is, as you pay for Facebook, you will get more benefits, and the rest of the people that don't pay will be subject to these type of apps. which is fine with me. I will never pay for Facebook. I will go to YouTube. So now, just to be clear about this, I went through and took out a couple of articles that I found. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday in the papers was a big day for Facebook. And by the way, what's up with Zuckerberg? Did you see his picture in the paper? They did a side by side. I noticed it when I saw him on TV, but then when they did a side by side from him in the newspaper, I was like, oh my gosh, he looks like I don't know. He doesn't look right to me. If the eyes are the window of the soul, he lost his somewhere along the way. But anyway, on Thursday's paper in the Wall Street Journal, there was an op-ed piece saying Facebook's monopoly is ripe for regulation. Okay. That headline screams regulation. Facebook's monopoly. Is Facebook a monopoly? How many other social sites can you think of? Quite a few. Facebook is hardly a monopoly. Is ripe for regulation. I mean, this comes right out and says it. So we read down, and it says the events of the last few months suggest the experiment may have run its course. It has left Facebook effectively an unregulated monopoly, and despite founder Mark Zuckerberg's latest apologies, the company has little economic incentive to change its ways. So this writer is Greg Ip is his name, is making the case right up front that Zuckerberg and Facebook needs regulation, and the first reason he uses is that it is a monopoly. We could easily dispute that by citing Google, Twitter, YouTube, WhatsApp, Snapchat. I mean, there's many social websites you could go to. Facebook is by no means a monopoly. You want to go after a monopoly, go after AT&T. Its business is to sell its users attention to advertisers, and thus it must keep pushing the boundaries on privacy while the paucity of competition limits the consequences if it goes too far. Okay. Again, they only get the information you put out there. If you don't want them to know that you like cheeseburgers, don't keep showing pictures of cheeseburgers and saying, I like cheeseburgers. It's not like they're going in and taking your social security number, your medical records, your credit score. It's not taking any of that. No privacy information. This is all information you put out there. If your friends keep putting pictures of cheeseburgers out there, you know they like cheeseburgers, right? Well, this company's doing the same thing, and this writer is making the argument for regulation as opposed to against. If policymakers want to change that calculus, again, the straw man, if they want to tear it down, a big if, reverse psychology, they definitely want to regulate it. They will either have to enact tougher regulation or use antitrust authority to nurture more competition. So he set up the parameters right here. Regulators, meaning government, House and Senate. If you want to get this straw man under control, you either need to regulate it or use your power to encourage more competition. Wow. So they use the straw man with false information to enact a scenario where the only two actions plausible in this man's eyes are actions from the government, regulate Facebook or help unregulate competition. Like Facebook, Equifax makes money by collecting and analyzing data about people. Unlike Facebook, Equifax also operates under several federal laws that expose it to significant legal risk. Multiple federal, state, and foreign regulators are investigating the breach. It also has competitors to whom disgruntled customers such as banks can turn. Okay. So now he's going to justify regulating it by comparing it to Equifax. Now, first, let's compare apples to apples. Equifax is a credit gathering company, which means it has your social security number, it has your credit rating, it has the way that you pay your bills, it has who your creditors are, how much you owe to each creditor, how you pay them, what your credit rating is. This is all private information that you basically had no input on how they gathered it, where they gathered it from, how they organized it, or how they displayed it. That was all on the company. They should be regulated. This guy is trying to compare that to Facebook, where it has no social security number, no credit rating, nothing about your creditors, nothing about how much you owe to anybody, not about how you pay your bills, has no information at all. The only information they're gathering is information you purposely put out there, like I like cheeseburgers, I like cats, I don't like fish. Okay, that's the information they're gathering. So this guy is trying to compare apples to bananas and come up with a one size fits all. So I rest my case that this whole Facebook thing is a big sham. They are trying to, the whole goal here from the end of the 2016 election was to have Facebook, Google, and Twitter to be regulated so that the leaders of those companies can regulate speech on their liberal social fronts and not take the heat for it and have a panacea for left-wing liberalism. I suspect they will be close by the time the 2018 election gets here. They will be there totally by the time Zuckerberg decides he wants to run for president in 2019. This is the next step. I believe the following step of the beginning of regulation will start soon. Once that bridge is crossed, the regulation will come fast and furious, inch by inch, piece by piece. By the time that happens, I do hope that people on Facebook have found another social outlet place to go to where it will be free and points of view of all political spectrum will be listened to. Okay, the next story I want to talk about is Syria. This week, President Trump ordered, I believe it was 108 cruise missiles to be shot into Syria in protest for Bashar al-Assad for using chlorine gas chemical weapons on his people. These were carried out Friday night. They appear to have been totally successful. None were shot down, no collateral damage as far as we know, and his ability to make, store, or use chemical weapons has been drastically cut. One of the things that the liberals always use is, oh my God, now we're going to be in a war with Russia. World War III has been the headlines for 3 days. That will never happen. Russia is nowhere near as bad as they used to be. Putin knows that if he pokes the bear, he will pay the price. So that's not going to happen. Now, will he do something in retaliation? Of course. He's ex-KGB. I would expect no less from him. And Trump may even let him get away to save face. But by and large, nothing's going to happen because that's just the way the world works. We're the big dog on the block, and nobody's going to mess with us. Now, A couple of questions I have. Were chemical weapons used in Syria? I have no question at all that that was true, without question. Did Bashar al-Assad do it? Now we have a question. I believe it could have been him. It could also have been the rebels, because just a week or two ago, Trump announced that we were going to pull American troops out as quickly and as soon as possible. They don't want them to go because they know that as soon as the American troops go, Assad is going to completely take over and dominate that country, and that's not what the rebels want. And the only reason he's going to be able to do that is because Russia is going to help him. And it could have been some of the invaders from the outside the country, the Kurds specifically, to continue to stir up trouble between those two because they don't want either one of them to win. So were chemical weapons used? Without question. Did Assad use them? I think that's open for debate. But let's say he did. What is an appropriate response? I don't know the answer to that. I do know a couple of things. I have followed several stories here in this country in the last 6 months, and I am not convinced that what I see on TV or what I see in pictures is accurate. Let's take Las Vegas. I know that the people were hurt and killed there. I do not know that 58 people died. I know that somebody shot some guns there. I don't know that Paddock was the only shooter. I don't even know that Paddock shot a gun. If you look in his room, look at the photos that have been released, I say no. I know guns were shot. I don't know that they were shot from one location. At one point, based on police radio, they had 5 different confirmed shooters in 5 different locations. I'm not convinced. My point is this. Did something happen in Syria? Yes. Was gas used? Yes. Did people die? Probably. Could it have been a false flag to get action from the United States? Absolutely. And here we go again. What's most likely? I don't know politics in that part of the country well enough to know, but I do know the timing is suspicious. If somebody is trying to extend the United States stay in Syria, how else better to do that than to let gas go, have the United States respond, and now we have to stay there till things are settled down, and just when they're about ready to settle down, we start another false flag. I believe that's a possible scenario. Again, what is an appropriate response? If we assume that Trump's response was appropriate, then we have answered the question, should we respond? I'm not sure we should have responded. I mean, I am a die-in-the-wool right-wing conservative, but I am not convinced we should have responded there. My view, the older I get, tends to be, unless we are imminently threatened, let the rest of the world blow itself up. Now, I know that other conservatives will say we are the leaders of the free world. We are the police. We determine what's good and bad, right and wrong. And to a certain degree, I agree. However, when you're dealing with barbarians, subtleties such as Geneva Convention and good and evil are completely foreign to them. That is like trying to put having 2 monkeys sit down to play Monopoly, and when one throws the board all over, you try to reset it and explain the rules. You're wasting your time. So in this particular instance, it might have settled things down for a little while, but that's not going to settle it. It's not done and over. And now Putin's got his feathers in a ruffle, so I'm assuming something's going to come from somewhere else. I'm not sure we should have responded. But if we did, and we did it strongly, and we did it in the right fashion, Trump did a beautiful job. I'm just not sure he made the right decision. In my opinion, the time and effort we have spent with Syria should have been concentrated worrying about China. China has put anti-ballistic missile batteries on those man-made islands that they have put out into the China Sea, South China Sea. Those are unrecognized islands. They are man-made by Chinese that are not owned by them or recognized to be owned by them. They're in international waters, and they put up anti-ballistic missiles as a pretense to their getting to their country. Perfectly logical, makes perfect sense to me. I would do the same thing if I were them. However, if you're going to send out 108 Tomahawk missiles, how about taking out those anti-ballistic missile sets on those islands, and then let's confront China and stop worrying about Syria. Let them blow themselves up. That's my opinion. Okay, the third story I want to talk about, and I've asked myself this question. If this had happened to a Democrat, would I be equally upset? And the answer is, I believe I would be. I'm talking about Donald Trump's personal attorney, Cohen, had his office ransacked, gone over, and all of his papers confiscated by the Southern District Office in New York, which was prompted by Mueller's investigation of Donald Trump. Now, if you don't think attorneys are important, every time I say the word lawyer or attorney, put in doctor. What if your doctor's office was ransacked and all of the records were taken over and all of your personal information was now available to a prosecutor? And at any time, at any point in the future, your records could become public knowledge. When you gave those records and he got that information, you were under client, attorney-client, or doctor-client privacy relationship. As an example, under the law, if an attorney and a client are discussing something and the client says, yes, I'm guilty, I did do that, the attorney needs to know that, but he is protected by law from that becoming public, because the attorney has to have the information to make a good case. So now all of a sudden, your enemy or an attorney's enemy has that information. What do you think he's going to do with it? He's going to take that information and plaster it all over everywhere to try to get your attorney to do what he wants him to do. I think that's despicable. For the sake of going after Donald Trump, they are going to totally get rid of the attorney-client privilege, and anybody that Trump has done business with, had any touching at all where Cohen was involved, is now going to be public information. And I think that's despicable. I think it's illegal. And Trump and his attorneys have gone to court to get that information quieted. But they're dealing on the East Coast. They're dealing with liberals. And even if they got to stay, that information, I'm sure, has already been duplicated, copies made, and shipped all the way to Washington, so that even if they have to return it all, the feds, led by Mueller, have got all the information they need or want. I think it's an abomination that they asked for it. I think it's an abomination that the FISA judge signed off on it. I think it's an abomination that the Southern District of New York acted on it. I think it's an abomination that they accepted the information. I think it's an abomination that it goes forward. And I think it's an abomination that anybody would even consider using that information. Again, Mueller proves that he has no problem at all using fruit from a deadly tree. That is just despicable. And even though he's done this many times, he still has nothing on Trump. This is one of our rights that are being trampled on in public in front of everybody, and they're thumbing their nose at us saying, ha ha ha, and there's no such thing as attorney client privilege anymore. And if that's gone, so is doctor client. So is priest client. And any other kind of accountant client privilege. All of the privilege that you think you have now is being destroyed by this one act. This has never been done in history. Never. You can't put Pandora back in the box. You can't undo what Mueller and the Southern District of New York has done. You can't undo that. Like I said, even if they got a restraining order tomorrow and told to put it all back, there's been so many copies made and so many people have so many copy machines have been running around the clock since this happened. There's copies in New York, there's copies in Washington. I'm sure they've shipped off copies to far-flung places like Florida and California and New Orleans just to keep them in safekeeping in case they round up copies. I promise you. I think it's despicable, and I think it speaks to the how far this investigation has gotten off kilter. And it screams to me, I don't think Trump needs to fire him, but I think Rosenstein needs to, and then Rosenstein needs to get fired, and everybody in the Justice Department from a certain level up needs to be fired and started over. This is unbelievably despicable. This is the deep state run amok with only a rabid dog leading. And this is wrong. Nothing good is going to come of this. Well, those are the three main stories I wanted to talk about. Now, in current events, there are 4 stories I wanted to touch on. Like I said, it's been a big week. Number one, House Speaker Paul Ryan is going to leave Congress. After this time, he's not going to seek re-election for Congress or leadership of the House. I think it's a great thing. Paul Ryan was part of the establishment. He was part of the Never Trumper. He was the one that said the wall will never be built. So, hasta la vista. Now, the question is, so what if in his district in Ohio, or Ohio, no, Wisconsin, he was an anomaly. In a Democratic district, he was a Republican that kept winning. And now the question is, what if a Democrat wins? My question is, who cares? At least we'll know a Democrat when we see one. Every time everybody looked at Ryan, they saw a Republican, but every time it came to doing Trump's bidding, he acted like a Democrat. How come we didn't get Obamacare overturned? I mean, go down the list. Why are we still slow walking things through the Senate? I know he's in the House, but he's part of that cabal that is anti-Trump. So hasta la vista. Recommendation I might make is why don't we send Steve Bannon up to that district and find a good conservative Republican and then pound that up there? The same people that put Ryan in office can be persuaded to put another conservative in there. The second story is China makes more concessions on trade. Again, this is what I've been saying from the beginning when Trump put tariffs on aluminum and steel, and everybody kept crying that there was going to be a trade war. China made a few false steps. I said, don't worry about it. This is just a way for them to save face. They came back out and announced more. Now, remember, nothing has been done. It's still not in writing. It's still not done. And this is the second round of concessions that China has made. Actually, the first one was they were going to ease up on steel, dumping aluminum and steel. The second one was they were going to lower the trade imbalance we have by buying more computer chips. And now we have here the third concession, and all Trump has done is threatened to have tariffs put on. There will be no trade war. There might be a little tit for tat so China can save face, but at $380 billion a year trade deficit, China's got a lot of making up to do and a lot of years of making up. So there will be no trade war. They're not going to stop buying our credit. Nothing, that is not going to happen. And this particular concession they're making is they're going to allow cancer machines into China without tariffs. And this is huge. They were going to go in there. The cancer machines were going to go in there, but they were going to have high tariffs on them. China offered to let them come in with no tariffs at all on them, which is huge. But once again, Trump keeps winning. China keeps conceding. They got a long way to go. You figure $380 billion a year, and they've probably done 50 or 60. So now the third story really isn't a story in the mainstream media, but this is an observation I've made. That little punk out of where that high school shooting was done, last name is Hogg. Everybody calls him Camera Hogg. His profile all of a sudden has gone way down. Nobody's talking about him. Nobody's seen him. And that bothers me for this reason. Whenever the last false flag goes down, there's usually a little bit of a lag time, and then a new false flag comes in. His went down this week, and we had what I consider might have been a false flag in Syria. They'll have attention on that for a week or so, and then I'm wondering when the next false flag will be here in the United States. I'm guessing there's one coming here pretty soon. Just reading the tea leaves, I have no proof at all, but just knowing the ebb and the flow of the way these have gone when we went from one school to Vegas to this school to Syria, and just noting the ebb and the flow, I'm saying one's coming in a couple of weeks is my guess. And the last current event I want to talk about is this week, President Trump has sent the National Guard to Mexico to protect our border. And he did that because there is a caravan of people coming from Central America. They're in Mexico now, and they are on their way to America. They believe that once they get to the border, they're going to surrender themselves and then be let loose in the country. And Trump is saying, you're not getting across the border. Now, here's the significance of this. There's several pieces of significance to this. Number one, Trump is demonstrating to the rest of the country and the rest of the world that this is a part of national security. He's using the National Guard to protect our border. Once that is established and it becomes a national issue, a national problem, he is free to use any money from the Pentagon to protect our borders, including building the wall. This is an important first step. I think it's been handled beautifully. Politically, it couldn't have been handled any better. They're coming. He contacted Mexico, tried to persuade them to disband them. They keep coming. He sends the National Guard. They keep coming. There will be a showdown. But regardless of how this turns out, physically on the ground. The political steps have already been taken that this is a national emergency, and the wall will be built, and it will be built with Pentagon money without question, and Congress has no say-so over that. And here's some things that you can kind of look at. The Democrats are obstructing stopping these folks. I mean, even the most liberal of liberals has to acknowledge that without borders, you have no country. I mean, if we have no border with Mexico, then there is no Mexican country and there is no American country. It's just one big blob of landmass. What makes us different is our country. I mean, you can look at the peoples and tell we're different. We're white, they're not. We're big, they're not. We speak English, they don't. We have certain values, they don't. I mean, we are as different as night and day. And yet, when we try to protect our borders and keep our heritage and define who we are, the liberals are standing in the way and yelling and screaming. I don't understand that, never have. But it's true. From where I stand, I call that treason. If you are willing to give aid and comfort to our enemy, and the enemy is one who is overtaking your border by definition, that would make the illegals coming across our border, that would make them our enemies. If you are trying to give aid and comfort to those people, you are committing treason. I don't understand the logic. Okay, so they are human. I agree. And they have a hard time. I agree. Their country is poor. I agree. Our country was the same way at some point in our history. We didn't go steal from other people or go hide in other countries or go take money from other countries and send it back to our people. We didn't do that. We figured out what the problem is and we dug in and we solved the problems. They have the same opportunities down there that we had up here. They can own land. They can get a job. They can live off of the land. They can pass their land down to their people. They have ways to amass wealth. They have somewhat of a free enterprise system. They have a way. They choose to come here because it's easier and quicker. We can't allow that. We need to close the borders, and we need to make it a national emergency to close our borders. Well, that's about all I wanted to cover for today. I hope you enjoyed the program. My intention last week was to take a week off because I've been sick as a dog, but God was not going to let me do that. He wanted me to do a program, and we did an Easter message last week, and I thoroughly enjoyed doing it, and I hope a lot of people enjoyed doing that. If you didn't see it, go back and check. It was last week's program. It was called Easter Message. Well, just one more thing before we go. If you'd like to know a little bit more about who we are and what we do, you can find us online at www.prayerboxministry.org. That's O-R-G. Go over there and check that website out. That site was developed to be an interactive website. You can join a prayer group. You can have somebody read the Bible to you. You can watch our programs. You can listen to our programs being streamed. There's a lot to do over there. Go over there and check us out. Prayerboxministry.org. That's org.org. Well, that's a program, everyone. You have a blessed week. I look forward to next week when we can sit down and talk about this week in politics.